I was a good husband and father, until I found out I'd been raising my brother's daughter all along. David was born when I was 3. I remember the smell of that old blue carpet in the hallway outside the delivery room, where Dad sat me down with a juice box and told me I had a baby brother. He smiled like it was the best thing that ever happened to him. It wasn't. From the very start, he stole every room we were in. Even as a baby, people fussed over him. They'd lean over his crib and coo, while I stood in the corner holding the coloring book they told me to bring, like a damn extra. That was my first taste of being invisible, and let me tell you, it stuck. I didn't hate him then. Not yet. I just kept waiting for my turn. Mom would say, "Be a good big brother, Danny. He's just little." That line didn't change even when David was bigger than me, louder than me, meaner than me. If he broke something, I must have distracted him. If he hit me, I must have provoked him. When he pushed me down the stairs when I was 10, cracked my elbow in 2, Mom told the ER nurse I was clumsy. Dad didn't say much. Not then. Just drove us home, silent, his jaw locked tight. But there was one day I remember. The only time someone picked me over David. I was 12, and David was 9. He'd cornered me in the backyard with a hammer, of all things. Said I'd scratched his new bike. I hadn't, but that never mattered to him. He swung wild and caught me just below the ear. Blood down my collar. I fell into the grass, and for the first time, I didn't get up. Not right away. Dad saw the whole thing from the kitchen window. He came out, slow and calm, walked right up to David, and slapped the hammer out of his hand. Then he grabbed him by the collar and dragged him inside. I heard the door slam. Then nothing for about an hour. When he came back out, he had a towel and some ice. Didn't say a word. Just knelt down, held it to my head, and sat with me till the bleeding stopped. He never raised his voice to David again. Never needed to. David avoided him after that, like a stray dog that knew who it couldn't bite. But Mom doubled down. She started making excuses before David could open his mouth. He's sensitive. He doesn't know his strength. You boys need to look out for each other. What she meant was, I had to look out for him. And he had free rein. By the time I hit 16, I was already planning my escape. Applied to every college with out-of-state tuition. Got a part-time job and saved every cent in a shoebox under my bed. I still remember the weight of that box in my backpack the day I left, more than just cash. It was my lifeline. I didn't come back for Christmas. Didn't call on birthdays. Cut my visits down to funerals and guilt trips. Even then, I stayed at motels. And then, somewhere along the way, I built a life. Got my degree. Got a job. Met Laura. She was everything my family wasn't, patient, warm, no strings attached. She taught me how to trust again, piece by piece. We got married in a courthouse on a cloudy Tuesday. Just us, no guests. Then came the kid. My daughter, or so I thought. She looked like me. Or maybe I just needed to believe that. Curly dark hair, wide brown eyes. I called her my little shadow. Every time she laughed, I felt something uncoil in me, something I didn't even know was wound up tight. For 5 years, I lived like that. Quietly. Carefully. I didn't talk much about the past. Laura never pushed. Then last Christmas, she broke. We were in the kitchen. She was washing dishes. I was sitting at the table, reading something dumb on my phone. She turned to me and said, "There's something I need to tell you." That's when everything went quiet. Real quiet. Like before a storm. She didn't cry. Not at first. Just stood there and said it flat. "It's David," she said. "It's been David. Since before we were married." I stared at her for what felt like years. I didn't understand the words. They didn't make sense. I thought she meant she'd run into him. Maybe an old email. Something stupid. Something fixable. But no, it was real. An affair. Long-term. Ongoing. And worse, the test. She'd done it already. Our daughter wasn't mine. I didn't throw anything. Didn't scream. Just stood up and walked out the back door. Drove for 3 hours with the windows down, just to feel something. When I got back, she was still in the kitchen. I told her we were done. That I'd never forgive her. That I didn't want to see her or David ever again. I didn't even take my things. Just packed a bag and left. Stayed at a friend's place for a few weeks until the papers came through. The hardest part wasn't losing her. It wasn't even losing my daughter. It was realizing I'd never really left home. Not when I carried that kind of betrayal in my blood. Not when the person I ran from turned out to be the father of my child. The first few nights after I left, I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I didn't speak. I just drove, long empty highways with the headlights cutting through fog like a knife through bread. I didn't cry. I don't cry. That part of me dried up when I was a kid. I stayed in a motel off I-84. Cheap place. You could hear everything through the walls, couples fighting, someone coughing till morning, the hum of ice machines and fluorescent lights. It fit. I felt like a ghost walking through someone else's life. I turned my phone off. Not silent. Off. Didn't check email. Didn't look at photos. Didn't think about the little pink backpack in the hallway closet, or the drawing on the fridge that said, "Daddy," in green crayon. I was done with all of it. Done trying to be a husband. A father. A brother. Even a son. 3 days in, my lawyer called. I picked up only because the motel front desk was calling me a dozen times a day about extending the stay. "Do you want full custody?" he asked. I laughed. Out loud. Not because it was funny. Because it was insane. "She's not mine," I said. There was a pause. Then he said something about legal standing and emotional connection, like those words meant anything anymore. I hung up. You ever feel like you're trapped in a story someone else wrote? That's how it felt, like my whole life had been a setup. Like I was the straight man in someone else's cruel little sitcom. The fool. A few weeks later, I moved into a furnished apartment on the other side of town. Nothing fancy. Just quiet. I bought a new couch, a bed, and a lamp. That was it. No photos, no decorations. No past. I didn't tell anyone where I was. Not at first. I wanted to disappear. But news spreads. And guilt travels fast in families like mine. The first call came from my mother. No voicemail. Just one ring after another. Then my father. Then Laura. I ignored them all. David never called. Of course not. He's never had to ask for forgiveness. He just expects it. When the divorce finalized, I went back once, to the house. Laura wasn't home. I let myself in with the old key before it got changed. Walked through like a stranger. The air was stale, like someone had been trying to keep everything preserved, like time had stopped there the moment I left. There were photos still on the wall. Us, smiling at the beach. Her holding our daughter. Me holding a lie. I took one thing, a small wooden box from my nightstand. Inside was the watch my father gave me when I graduated college. He never said he was proud. Just handed it over like it was a transaction. Still, it was the only moment I ever felt like maybe I'd done something right in his eyes. When I got back to the apartment, I threw it in the drawer and didn't open it again. A month later, my father showed up at my office. He looked old. Older than I remembered. Hair thinner. Shoulders stooped. Like the weight of David was finally showing on his face. We sat in the break room. No small talk. No, how are you? He just said. I told your brother never to come back. He's out of the will. Out of the family. I didn't say anything. He looked at me with those tired eyes and said, I should have done it years ago. I was afraid of your mother. I looked up. That part one didn't expect. He nodded slowly. She's not speaking to me now. Thinks I'm choosing you over her golden boy. He smiled, bitter. Guess I am. I asked him, why now? He looked me dead in the eye and said, because it finally happened to you. And it broke something in me. We sat in silence after that. Just two men who'd been beaten by the same storm, finally realizing they were on the same side. We didn't hug. Didn't cry. Just shook hands. That's how men like us say sorry. I stayed angry for a long time. Not the loud, yelling kind. The quiet kind. The kind that poisons your coffee, steals your sleep, makes every room feel 10 degrees colder than it should. I went to work, I came home, I ate alone. I didn't date. Didn't want to. The idea of letting someone get that close again made my stomach turn. I saw couples in grocery store aisles and felt nothing but distance, like I was behind glass watching a world I used to belong to. My ex emailed me once. Said she wanted to talk. No apology. Just 3 lines that ended with foreclosure. Closure. As if I had some neat little file drawer in my chest labeled marriage, failed. Betrayal, filed. Emotions, resolved. I deleted it. She tried again a few weeks later, this time with a photo, my daughter. Dressed as a princess, holding a painted rock. Said she'd made it for me at school. My hands shook for hours after that. I didn't reply. I couldn't. I knew if I did, I'd go back. And if I went back, I'd never come out. That's the thing people don't understand about betrayal. It doesn't just hurt, it rewires you. The trust you once gave out freely like candy at Halloween? Gone. Every interaction becomes a chessboard. Every smile looks suspicious. Even with my father, things were slow. We met for lunch maybe once a month. Diner food. No big speeches. Just 2 men trying to build something from scraps. He told me about the will. Showed me the documents. Said the house would go to me now. The savings. The property in Arizona he never told anyone about. I didn't care about the money. Still don't. But it meant something, knowing he'd finally chosen me. He also told me he hadn't seen David since the day he disowned him. Said he heard he moved in with Laura. I asked if they were raising my daughter together. He nodded once. Said nothing more. I didn't ask for details. I didn't want them. That chapter was closed, and I wasn't reopening it just to bleed all over again. A few months later, I got promoted at work. Quiet ceremony. No party. Just a key card and a pay raise. My boss said, "You've been solid through a lot. You've earned it." Funny thing is, I didn't feel proud. I felt numb. Like I'd won something in a game I stopped playing years ago. But I took the title. Took the office. Took the peace that came with having something that was mine, built from nothing but effort and time. That same week, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just my name, written in a familiar hand. Inside was a photo. The same one from the email, my daughter in her princess dress. On the back, it said, "She still calls you Daddy." I sat with that for a long time. Just sat. Didn't cry. Didn't yell. Just felt it, like a knife you forgot was still inside you. Then I put it in a drawer, locked it, and went for a walk. The air was clean. My boots hit the pavement in a steady rhythm. No ghosts, no noise. Just the sound of my own feet and a breeze that didn't ask anything of me. That was the moment I realized, I wasn't angry anymore. Not at her. Not at David. Not even at myself. I'd survived the worst thing I could imagine. And I was still standing. Time's funny. At first it crawls, like your body's trying to live through every second twice. Then one day you look up and realize it's been 6 months, and you don't remember what she sounds like when she laughs. You don't remember the last thing your brother said to you before you stopped calling him your brother. I was still keeping my head down at work. Still sleeping on one side of the bed out of habit. Still leaving one mug clean in the cupboard, like I expected someone to show up and drink coffee with me. Grief lingers like that, quiet, patient, always waiting for you to notice it again. Around that time, I started seeing a therapist. My boss suggested it. Said the company covered a few sessions. I'd never done therapy before. Didn't think I needed it. Thought I was handling things just fine. But the first time I sat down in that tiny office with its mint green walls and box of tissues on the table, I realized I hadn't told the full story out loud. Not once. Not even to myself. I told her about David. About the way he used to lock me in the crawlspace for fun when we were kids. How Mom would laugh when he lied about it. How Dad looked away. How that kind of silence teaches a boy that pain is just part of love, that you should expect cruelty from people who say they care. Then I told her about Laura. About the way she looked at me during the early years. Like I was good. Like I was whole. I didn't cry, but my hands trembled, and she noticed. Just handed me a stress ball like I was supposed to squeeze my way back to sanity. She asked, "Do you think you can ever forgive them?" I said, "That's the wrong question. What's the right one?" I looked at her, dead in the eye, and said, "Do I need to? Because that's what people don't understand. Forgiveness isn't always noble. Sometimes it's just another leash." I didn't want them forgiven. I wanted them gone. I wanted my name out of their mouths, my face out of their memories, my blood out of their lives. And that included the little girl who used to call me Daddy. Yeah, that part still haunted me. Not because she did anything wrong. She didn't ask to be born into this mess. But I knew if I stayed even a little, I'd get pulled back in. And I wouldn't survive it a second time. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from someone you love. I spent the next few weeks clearing out the rest of my old life. Cancelled subscriptions. Closed joint accounts. Sold the last piece of furniture I bought with Laura, a wooden desk that still had a sticker my daughter had slapped on the underside. Took it to a donation center and didn't look back. I started running in the mornings. Nothing serious. Just laps around the neighborhood before the sun got too high. It helped. Gave me something to sweat over that wasn't bitterness. And slowly, the silence in my apartment stopped feeling like a punishment. It started to feel like peace. It was raining when David showed up. Of course it was. I hadn't seen him in almost a year by then. Not since the day I packed a bag and walked out of the house like a man escaping a fire. That day, I didn't look back. Now, here he was, standing on the steps outside my apartment, water dripping from his hair, wearing that same smug, broken expression he always wore when he thought he could fix things by talking long enough. He knocked 3 times. Then again. Then he said my name, not bro, not Dan. Just my full name, like we were strangers with the same blood. I opened the door just far enough to see his face and smell the wet street behind him. "What do you want?" I asked. He looked down at his shoes, then back up. I thought maybe we could talk. I almost laughed. I really did. But I was too damn tired. I stepped outside, closed the door behind me. Didn't invite him in. Let the rain hit both of us. "You've got 2 minutes," I said. He shoved his hands in his pockets, the way he used to when he lied to our parents about stealing something. Old habits, I guess. "I didn't plan it," he started. "With Laura. It just happened." That phrase, "it just happened," might be the laziest lie a man can tell. Nothing just happens for 5 years behind a man's back. Nothing just happens when you climb into your brother's bed through his wife. I didn't reply. I didn't nod. I just stared at him. I didn't know about the kid, he said next. Not for sure. She looks like you, I said. I just didn't want to see it. He flinched. Good. He kept going, like he could wear me down with words. She doesn't know. Not really. She still asks about you. Laura says your name like it's some kind of ghost. Maybe I am, I said. That's when he dropped the act, the fake humility, the regret routine. His voice turned sharp. You walked away, man. You didn't even try. There it was. The real David. I stepped closer. Just close enough for him to see that he didn't scare me anymore. You were always the favorite. Always the one who got away with everything. I took beatings so you wouldn't cry. I cleaned up every damn mess you made growing up. And when I finally built something for myself, you set fire to it. His mouth opened. I didn't let him speak. I didn't walk away because I was weak. I walked away because if I'd stayed, I would have turned into you. That shut him up. He looked like he wanted to swing. Like the old days. But I wasn't 12 anymore, and this wasn't our parents' house. So he did what cowards do when they lose, he played the family card. We're family, he said. Whether you like it or not. I nodded. No. Your blood. That's different. And then I turned around and went inside. Locked the door. Sat down in the kitchen. Let the rain keep falling. He stood out there for a while. Knocked a few more times. Then nothing. That was the last time I ever saw him. No police. No shouting. No court case. Just two men in the rain, one who finally stood up, and one who realized he'd never be able to knock him down again. The day after David showed up, I got up early. No alarm, no reason, just couldn't sleep. My body was done with all the noise. The rage, the pain, the bitterness. It was like someone finally turned the volume down, and all I heard was the quiet ticking of the clock on my kitchen wall. I made coffee. Real coffee. Not that instant stuff I'd been living on. Sat down by the window. Watched the sky go from navy to ash to gold. I don't know why, but that morning I started writing things down. Not in a journal, I've never been the type, but just, a list. A list of what I knew for sure. My brother is gone. My marriage is over. My daughter is not mine. My father chose me. I survived. That last one took the longest to write. It was true. I had survived. Everything. But survival's not the same as healing. Surviving just means you're still breathing. Healing is when you start choosing to breathe for yourself. So I started choosing. I canceled Laura's number from my phone. Blocked it. Not in anger, just in acceptance. That door was closed. No more what ifs, no more looking at photos wondering what might have been. It's easy to sink into that kind of nostalgia, makes the past seem cleaner than it was. But I wasn't going to lie to myself anymore. A week later, I took down the last of the old boxes from the closet. They'd been sitting there since the day I moved in, old letters, baby clothes, photos. I went through them one by one. Some I kept. Most I didn't. Burned the rest in a steel bucket on the patio. You'd be surprised how quiet a fire can be when it's burning the things you no longer need. Around that same time, I called my dad. Just to talk. We didn't go deep. We don't do that. But we talked about the garage he was organizing. Some old car he was fixing up. He asked if I wanted to come by next weekend. I said yes. Not because I missed him. Not because I needed anything. But because sometimes the best way to move forward is to go back to the few people who chose to stay, and build something small and steady out of what's left. That Saturday, I drove out to his place. Brought burgers. We didn't talk about David. Didn't talk about Laura. Just listened to the game on the radio and worked on a rusted-out truck that hadn't run since 1982. That was the first Saturday I didn't feel broken. Not fixed, just not broken. It was enough. There's a moment when the pain isn't screaming anymore, it's just there, sitting beside you, like an old dog that won't leave the porch. That's what healing felt like. I wasn't angry every morning. I wasn't flinching every time my phone lit up. I wasn't waking up thinking of her voice, or his laugh, or the word "daddy" in a little girl's mouth that would never belong to me again. I still missed her. Don't mistake me. Not Laura. My daughter, or whatever word you want to give her now. I don't say her name anymore. Not out loud. But it lives in me, like a tattoo I didn't ask for. I missed reading her bedtime stories, the smell of her hair after a bath, the way she'd curl her fingers into mine like I was her whole world. But that world wasn't mine to stay in. And I couldn't live in borrowed skin anymore. So I built new skin. Started small, joined a gym. Not to get better. I didn't give a damn about six-packs or resolutions. I just needed structure. Something to do with the hours I used to fill with doubt. Then came books. I hadn't read in years, not really. Not since college. But one afternoon I walked into a used bookstore and walked out with 5 paperbacks and a coffee stain on my sleeve. I spent that whole weekend reading on the couch, with the windows open and the world quiet around me. I even started going out again. Not bars, I'm not 25 anymore, and I've got no stomach for small talk over cheap beer. But cafes. Hardware stores. Long walks at the lake. Just places where people were people. I wasn't looking for anyone. I just wanted to be someone again. One afternoon, I met a woman named Claire at the park. Nothing dramatic. She had a dog that wouldn't stop barking at my shoelaces. We laughed. Talked. Walked a while. Turned out she was divorced too. No kids. She told me that straight off, like she didn't want to waste time. I appreciated that. We had coffee the next weekend. Then again the weekend after. I didn't tell her the whole story, not yet. But I told her enough. She listened. That was new. She didn't try to fix me. Didn't offer advice. Just sat across from me, nodded now and then, and didn't flinch when I mentioned the affair, or the paternity, or the way I'd cut everyone off like a man digging his own trench. When I told her my daughter wasn't mine, she just said, "But you were still her dad." For a while. That matters. I nodded. Didn't speak. Just let that sit. Because it did matter. It mattered even if I'd walked away. Even if I'd chosen to. That night, I stood by the window of my apartment and looked at the sky. No stars, just city haze and a half-dead moon. But for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel alone under it. I felt whole. Not fixed. Not perfect. Just whole. My father's garage was always a mess, organized chaos, the kind only he understood. Rusted socket sets, old oil cans, stacks of yellowed newspapers he swore he'd read someday. But that place felt more like home than the house ever did. He called me one morning in early spring. Said he had a leaky faucet. I knew damn well he could fix it himself. But I went. When I got there, he was already in the garage, sleeves rolled up, eyes on a rusted pipe like it had personally insulted him. He didn't look up when I walked in. Just nodded toward the toolbox. I grabbed a wrench. We got to work. It wasn't about the faucet. It never is. It was about standing side by side again, after everything, without needing to explain why. After an hour, we sat on a couple of overturned buckets, hands greasy, sweat on our brows. He passed me a beer. I took it. We didn't toast. Just drank. Then he said, "You remind me of myself." I waited. Not the angry version, he added. The one that kept getting back up. I glanced at him. You got back up? Eventually. He told me about his own father. How the man used to drink till he couldn't stand, then swing at anything in reach. How my grandmother died when Dad was 16, and how no one ever told him what love was supposed to feel like. Just told him to man up and move on. And then I met your mother, he said, staring at the wall like it held the answers. She was strong. Beautiful. But I was already set in stone. She made her choice. So did I. We sat in that silence for a long time. Then he turned to me and said, I knew what David was. I just didn't want to see it. I asked him why. He shrugged. Because it was easier to believe the lie. That I hadn't failed as a father. That one of you turned out right. He looked tired. Not just old, tired. But I did fail, he said. You shouldn't have had to leave to feel safe. That was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever get from him. And honestly, it was enough. I turned out fine, I said. You turned out in spite of us, he replied. That's different. I didn't argue. Because he was right. We talked a bit more. About engines. About the price of lumber. About Claire. I mentioned her name like it was casual, but he picked up on it. Gave me a look. Said nothing. When I got up to leave, he followed me to the door. Right before I stepped out, he said, Your mother still asks about you. I haven't told her much. I figured, I said. She misses you. In her own way. I didn't reply. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a key. What's this? The Arizona place. I don't go anymore. Thought maybe you'd want it. I held it in my palm. Small, cold, simple. I'll think about it, I said. He nodded. I got in my truck and drove home. Didn't cry. Didn't clench the wheel or curse the past. Just drove. And for the first time in years, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I had a place to return to that wasn't built on pain. It came on a Thursday. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. That soft, curled script, too careful to be real, Laura's way of making everything look sweeter than it was. I didn't open it. Just stared at it for a while. Moved it from the mailbox to the counter. From the counter to the table. From the table to the edge of the trash can. Then I stopped moving it. I let it sit there, white and quiet, like a question I didn't need answered. Because here's the truth, nothing she could write would change a damn thing. What was she going to say? That she was sorry? That she loved me once? That our daughter missed me? All of it might have been true. But it didn't matter anymore. Sorry doesn't rebuild a man's life. Love doesn't undo betrayal. And children, even the ones you'd give your soul for, can't always be yours to keep. Claire came by that evening. She didn't ask about the envelope. She just poured 2 glasses of wine, kicked off her shoes, and sat beside me on the couch. That was the kind of grace I didn't know I needed, the kind that doesn't pry. She's not like Laura. Doesn't need attention, doesn't play games. She listens. Laughs easy. Wears her pain like old denim, comfortable, worn in, no need to hide it. We didn't talk much that night. Just watched a movie, shared a blanket, fell asleep with our knees touching. The next morning, while she was still asleep, I picked up the envelope, held it over the trash, and let go. It landed soft. Final. Not out of spite. Not to hurt her. But because there's a point when you stop needing closure. That was the morning I stopped needing hers. Later that week, I got a call from my father. Told me David had moved again. Out of state. No one knew where. He said it like a question, like he wanted me to care. I said, I hope he finds whatever it is he's chasing. And I meant it. I didn't wish him harm. Didn't want revenge. I just didn't want him near my life. That was enough. Some nights, I still think about the girl who called me daddy. I don't imagine her face anymore, memory softens like that. But I remember her voice. The way it would rise when she saw me at the door. The way her arms felt when she wrapped them around my leg, looking up like I was some kind of hero. And maybe I was. For a while. I hope she's loved. I hope she's safe. I hope someone tucks her in and tells her the monsters aren't real. Because I fought mine for years. And I won. A year passed. No calls. No letters. No knocks at the door. It's funny, when you're a kid, silence feels like punishment. As an adult, after a life like mine, it's the closest thing to peace. Claire and I took a weekend trip down to the Arizona place, the old house my father handed me the key to. It's small, a little sun-bleached thing tucked between some scrubby pines and desert rock. But it's quiet. Honest. Doesn't pretend to be more than it is. I like that. We spent the mornings drinking coffee on the porch, the afternoons hiking trails that wound through cactus and dust. She's good company. Doesn't talk too much, doesn't talk too little. She lets things breathe. Lets me breathe. We didn't define anything. Didn't need to. Sometimes healing isn't a conversation. Sometimes it's just sharing a sunset and not feeling like you're bracing for an explosion. My father calls once a month now. We talk about nothing important. That's how we like it. He asks if I've been down to the house. I tell him yes. He never asks about Laura. Or David. We have an unspoken agreement, the past stays buried. I saw my mother once, from a distance. She was crossing the parking lot outside a grocery store. Hair thinner now. Slower than I remember. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did and looked away. Either way, I didn't stop her. She made her choices. Just like I made mine. David's gone. Last I heard, he was in Colorado. Maybe Utah. Doesn't matter. He could be living in a cabin in the woods or a condo in the city, so long as he's not living anywhere near me. As for my daughter, I still think of her. Quietly. Sometimes I'll be in a store and hear a little girl laugh, and for half a second, I remember the weight of her in my arms. The way she used to fall asleep on my chest like the world didn't exist beyond my heartbeat. I don't cry when I think about her. Not anymore. She was part of my life. A good part. But not mine to keep. And that's okay. Because now I wake up without dread. I go to work. I read books. I take walks. I fix things that break. I eat good food with someone who never made me feel small. My home is quiet. Clean. Real. And for the first time in my life, I don't feel like I'm living in someone else's shadow. I feel like a man. Scarred, sure. But standing.